My name's Helena Turner. I'm one of the volunteers here at Lynde House. And one of my passions is spinning. So I thought I would tell you today a little about wool processing and how to spin wool. Now, if you notice at Lynde House, we do have a big spinning wheel here. Now, this is what's called a walking wheel or a grate wheel. And a lot of questions I get from children is, where did Sleeping Beauty prick her finger? So you only get the type of spindle on a walking or grate wheel, and it's this sharp here. Now here, it's made out of wood at Lynde House, but a lot of times they were made out of metal and they were much more sharp. If you notice with a grate wheel as well, it doesn't have a treadle. So what a woman would do is when she's spinning the yarn, and I'll come over to this side, and she has her wool, and she has to walk with the wool and then walk back as it spins, and she moves the grate wheel and it spins the wool onto the spindle. A lot of times you'll see other types of spinning wheels that have treadles. Before you can start to spin, you have to get the wool. If you lived on a farm and you would have sheep, the shearing season is in the spring, usually the end of April, the beginning of May, and that's when the sheep would get sheared of their fleece. Now, shearing your sheep is just like cutting your hair, so it doesn't hurt the sheep at all. These are a pair of typical sheep shearers that would have been used, and you just use them and you cut the sheep's fleece very, very close to the skin. Nowadays, the shearers use something more mechanical, like if you went to the barber and the barber shaved your hair. So that's the type of shears that they use now, but much bigger for the sheep. And once the sheep is sheared, you get a whole fleece. Now, once we have the fleece, if you can imagine, sheep have been out in the field and they're not very clean. So we're going to have to wash the fleece. The boys would help with the shearing of the sheep, but it's usually a girl's job to then carry on and do the rest of the preparation to start to spin. So now we're going to wash that fleece in very, very hot water. And we need to wash it about 2 or 3 times. Sheep naturally have lanolin in their fleece, and that's what prevents them from getting all wet in the rain. It protects their skin. So we want to keep some of that lanolin, but we also want to get a lot of the dirt out of it. Can you imagine the sheep running in the fields and they're collecting all the burrs and all the different grasses and fibers? So this is a piece of sheep wool that has been washed, but it hasn't been cleaned. So now once you wash it, you're going to have to lay it out in the sun. We're going to put it over a fence on a nice, bright, windy, sunny day, and it may take 2 or 3 days to dry. Now, sheep come in multiple colors. They only come in white, or this one's black. We can get gray and brown. So it doesn't give you a lot of colors. Once I've washed the wool, now I have to tease it. If you go out hiking, you might find something called a plant called teasel. And in the olden days, they would use that plant to comb out all of the bits of fiber. So, but one of the things that children can do, and one of their jobs would be to tease the wool. So you take little bits of the wool and you pull it. And what you're getting out is all of the little bits of grass and burrs and twigs. And you keep pulling it until you have a beautiful, nice, fluffy cloud, right? That's what you want to get. You want to get out all, there's little more bits of grass and twigs. There's some more grass and twigs. Even though it's clean, it's still full of all these twigs. We have to get them out. And now I'm going to get this beautiful, fluffy cloud. Now here's a beautiful piece of wool that has the locks. Some sheep have really long fibers, and look at the locks on that, all nice and curly. That's a beautiful lock. of wool. There's many different types of sheep, and each sheep may give you different types of wool. Some sheep will give you nice, really soft wool, like a merino sheep. Other sheep will give you more coarser wool, like a Corriedale sheep. So depending on the type of wool you want will depend on the type of sheep that you might have. So now I've teased this quite a bit. And look, I have this lovely, fluffy cloud. And now there's still a little bit of fiber in there, but not as much. So can you imagine you would have to do this for that whole sheep's wool? Clean it out like this. Now, once I've got it to this point, it's still not done. There's still more processing that I have to do. So now I have a set of carders. They have very sharp teeth on the inside, and we need to card the wool. What we want is all the fibers to run in the same direction. So again, this would be a job that everyone in the house could do. These are jobs that you would do in the wintertime when you had more time after harvesting. And you're going to load your carders. And again, this is another long process. You take the other carder and you comb them, right? Just like you're combing your hair. And what we're doing is getting all of the fibers to line up. And I'm going to flip them over and I'm going to do it on the other side. You want it all nice and straight. This also gets out any more of the little bits of debris from the wool, like more twigs, more bits of grass will also come out at the same time as you're doing this. Now, once I've done this, then I'm going to put them together and clear the carders of the fiber. And I'm going to roll it all up into what's called a roll egg. There we go. So we have a nice piece of sheep's wool, all nice and ready to spin. Now, what I like to call this is a sheep's tail. Doesn't that look like a sheep's tail? So now it's ready to spin. But at this point, we can decide whether we want to dye it or we can wait till after it's spun to dye it. So at this point, I'm going to just talk about how to dye it. Okay, so this is some wool fiber that has been dyed, and these have been dyed using natural dyes. So we can use things like different types of flowers. Right? So we have some calendula and some black-eyed Susan and some goldenrod. So all of those can make all sorts of different dyes. These ones actually, this one right here is the Queen Anne's lace. So from this flower, that's the color that you're going to get. Now, this one here, the brown one, is from black walnuts. So when they fall off the tree, then you can use it to dye to different colors, rather than just having your plain old black, white, and brown. This one here actually is from sumac berries, mixed in with some other white fibers as well. So to dye the wool, then you have to, again, pick the product that you want, the flowers or the walnuts that you want, and you have to boil them to make a liquid, and then you strain out all the flowers or strain out the black walnuts. For some things, you need to mortar the fiber. To use things naturally, we would use alum or vinegar. But if you're going to use black walnut, you don't have to use a mordant at all. It won't run out. It will stay in the fiber. It won't bleed out. Now, you put the mordant wool into the vat of the liquor that you had produced, and you have to boil that for about an hour. Keep it at a simmer. Once you've done that, then you now have to rinse it. And you rinse it until none of the color comes out of the fiber. So even though you think you're going to have a nice bright colored piece of fabric or piece of fiber, you may find out that it will be a much different color than you expect. If you try things at home with like beets or cabbage that you think you're going to get a nice red, sometimes it just washes out to be very, very pale. But it's always a good thing to try.